Hey guys, it's Paleo here. Today I'm going over how you can use a grid to construct a logo design in Adobe Illustrator. Quickly, I just wanted to say thank you to the people that left these comments and thank you for the support on last video. I think you got like 30 likes and 200 views in just 2 days, and that was really appreciated. Thank you so much. In that video, I covered 5 tips on how to create logo designs in Adobe Illustrator, and this grid system will definitely assist in all of those aspects. So if you want to go check that video out, feel free. But let's move on to the grids now. Using grids to construct your logo designs can really help it make it look more professional, because it makes it a lot easier to make the angles and the lines and the rounding a lot more consistent. A lot of designers use grids to construct logos nowadays. It's almost become a meme at this point, where you'll see a bird or something and it'll show like a million circles used to construct it, when in reality it really wasn't the case. But the fact that it has become kind of a meme at this point shouldn't take away from the fact that it is a great way to construct a logo design. Before we start, there's 2 different types of grids I'm going to cover in this video. One is the orthogonal and one is the isometric. The orthogonal one is just the basic square grid where it has lines horizontally and vertically. The isometric grids will be using a 60-degree angle as opposed to a 90. And in my mind, isometric grids are a lot better if you want a tighter perspective on the logo. But personally, I feel like the orthogonal grids, or just the square grids, are a lot easier to construct in Adobe Illustrator and a lot easier just to imagine concepts in your head, if that makes sense. But enough of me talking, let's get into the sketching right now. So now that we're at our paper here, you can see the 2 different types of grids I was talking about. The isometric one is right here, and the orthogonal one is right here. The isometric one might be a little bit harder to find. If you wait till the end of the video, I'm actually going to be doing a small giveaway on something like this. The more details will be at the end of the video on how you can enter the giveaway. But let's start with the orthogonal graph here, or just the square graph. Let's say we wanted to construct a logo based on the letter S, and we'll just do a really basic one just to start. So let's start with this point here, just draw a line, another line, and we'll do a line here, line here. Just creating a basic S. It doesn't have to look good, the sketching. I'm a pretty poor sketcher, honestly. Once we have that, we can see we followed the grids to create that. But let's create some rounding in it, just because that just feels a little boring. The rounding won't make it feel any more unique, I don't think, but it'll just definitely be something cool to try when we recreate it in Adobe Illustrator. So to create this rounding in the sketches, just to make sure it's as accurate as I can possibly be using freehand, I draw a little point here halfway between these intersections here. And then I draw another little point right here, and another little point right here. And then I kind of just round them and connect them. And then since we want this rounding to be consistent, we're going to want to round straight up from this point right here, straight sideways from this point right here, and then straight down from this point right here. And just connect them with rounding. And now this looks extremely awkward because this bottom part isn't rounded as well. So we're going to do that. Just the same principles that we just did on there. Okay, that is very basic so far. Now what I think we're going to do is extend this out 45 degrees, or just a 1-to-1 block. Just like that. I'm going to do it on both sides there. I'm actually going to extend it out another one, and then do that 45-degree block again. Just to try it out. Let's see. And then I think I'm going to extend it up. Just like this. But you'll notice as soon as we do this, that this actually is a bit thinner than these. And that's just because you're skewing this rectangle. So let's say you have this rectangle here, for example, and now you're skewing it here, but you're still putting it on the same points. That means it's going to be thinner, because if you actually rotated this one, it would be a little bit thicker. It'd probably be like right there and right there. And that would be similar to the width of this one here, as opposed to this one. When doing this, I always make sure it's a little bit wider than the previously specified point right here. We'll do the same right here. And I want it to go down about halfway, so about right here. I'm just gonna draw a little line here so we can use that as a reference. And that one works too. I'm going to color it in, or just sketch it in here. Erase this little part here, it looks a little too thick. There we go. Now just to try something out, I'm going to remove this centerpiece here. Just where, let's see, so 45 degrees, 45 degrees, 45 degrees. Mostly we're doing that here as well. These two should connect hypothetically if you were to connect the line to them. But let's just try removing these points and see how it looks. 5, 45, 45. 5, 45, 45. Okay, and then let's just draw a little circle in there. We can always change the size of that later. Draw it in a little bit more here. I'm just going to erase these lines just so I can get a better view of what it looks like. Not too bad. I don't think I like this circle. I'm just going to remove that. Actually, we're just going to set it back to how it was originally with the point here and the point here. Set up right now. It's always good to just try things, see what works, see what looks good. Okay, so now let's try on the isometric grid. I don't know how well you guys can see it, but it has 60-degree lines going downwards like this. So let's try an S logo on the isometric grid as well, just to keep it consistent. On this one, it's a lot more triangle based, so I'm just going to use that to my advantage here. Maybe we want to like extend these points a little. Maybe extend this one. Personally, I think this one looks a bit tall, so I'm going to try and find a way to make it a little wider. Let's try extending this a little bit. That one might be cool. Here, let's I'm gonna connect these a little bit better just so you can get a better visualization on how it's gonna look. Let's try putting this the opposite way here. Actually, let's erase these. I don't really think they look that good. Maybe we add some spacing between these two elements here. Maybe it's just a triangle, or maybe it's even just the halfway point. There. Let's try making it a little less tall here by just removing these 2 points. That looks kind of weird. Extending these two, seeing how it looks. I think it looks like a cool like SX idea potentially, or like XS. Now that we have our base sketches drawn here, we are going to try and recreate them in Illustrator using the same type of grids in Illustrator as well, just to make it a little bit easier on us. So now that we have Illustrator open, we can create a new document by just going Command N or Control N, making the width 1080 and making the height 1080. I'll take a photo of the sketches that we made and I'm just going to put them in here really quick. You don't really need to do that, but I'm just doing it just for a reference so we have it side by side on the screen. Now that we have the image here, I'm just going to scale it down a little bit and maybe move it over. And we're going to start with the square grid first. We can simply do this by just hitting Command and the quotation symbol, or going to View and selecting Show Grid. And then we want to snap to grid as well, so we can show grid and then view snap to grid, which is just Shift, Command, and the quotation mark. And now essentially we just zoom in and compare what they have here. So I remember how we completed this the first time. We simply drew a line right here. And we can kind of compare how many boxes each one is just to get a good reference here. So to start, I'm just going to use 3 across, because I believe that's what we started with. And I know we had 3 different bars of 3 across, so I'm going to do that as well. And now we're going to do the rounding here, because we have the rounding that's right here. So to do the rounding, we're just going to select L, and that selects the ellipse tool, and then we are going to create one right here that goes the span of these boxes, and then create one inside here. And now we can select both of these by holding, if you're using the ellipse tool right now, you can hold Shift and then Command or Control and select it, so then you're both selected. Then we're going to use the shape builder tool, which is Shift and M, and and we're just going to remove the inside here. And now we can hold Control or Command, select all of these here, and just remove these outside parts. If you don't know how to remove them, it's just Alt and you can select with the Shape Builder tool, or you can drag. Now we can do the same thing on the bottom here just by creating the two same sized ellipses on the bottom in the same kind of spot. Select them both, hold Shift and M. We can use the Shape Builder tool and drag across these to delete them. Then we can drag across this one, and then we can select this one. You can see we have this sort of a similar thinking process in terms of the sketching as well as the logo design on Illustrator. And that's kind of like how I set it up on my grid paper, even when I'm just sketching for client logos or for fun. I make sure I kind of do a similar process between sketching and vectoring. Now that we have this, we know this next angle is going to be a 45 degree, this one straight down here. So what we can do is just create a line here. And it's easy to know the line width of your logo because it's just one box or just however many boxes you're using. But regardless, we can just draw a line here. So once you've created this rectangle, we're just going to rotate it 45 degrees by holding Shift and dragging on the rotate. Now I'm going to create another rectangle and draw it over this one so that the line doesn't stop at that kind of diagonal right there. So you can see that we're going to use the Shape Builder tool, just Shift M, and remove these two, so then we have that sharp point at the end. You can see right here we have this one box past it and this other box past it, and right up from that end of that box is the corner. So we're just going to do that exact same thing on the vector here. And you'll notice when you're moving this one, it kind of snaps oddly, and that's because this point right here is trying to snap to a side as well as this point right here. So it's going to be a little bit off, you can see, and it might be hard to catch it sometimes, so just make sure that you're snapping to the right one. So clearly this one isn't snapping correctly, but if we move it a little bit more, there we go. Now it's snapped there, and what we can do, just like we did in the sketch, is cut it off halfway at that intersection there. And we can do that by turning snap to grid off, so using Shift Command at the quotation, or just going into view and turning it off. And making a rectangle from this anchor point on this ellipse here, dragging it over, selecting these two, and then using the Shape Builder tool once again, just to remove these points. Now you can see that we have this nice 45 degree line that we sketched out, and we have it fully vectored. And we just want to remove this space here that's a little bit extra. So to do that, I'm just going to make another rectangle and drag it across. If you want to see what you're doing a little bit better, you don't have to have the stroke on. I would recommend just turning the fill to none, and then just inversing the stroke and the fill. Now you have that sort of off black color. And since we did that with this one, and it's the same on the other side, what we can do is just copy, paste it, and then set it where it's supposed to be. So that's 2 away. Make sure it's snapped in the right spot. I normally zoom in quite far, but you can see that that's the logo we sketched here, and it's pretty accurate. At least everything's the same width now. If you want to make this look cooler, what we can do is select it all, and then use the Pathfinder and click to unite. Normally if this were client work, I would remove these extra points here that aren't necessary. So don't remove these ones, because those ones actually alter the shape, or even these ones. But just the ones on straight lines that are meant to be straight, there's really no use in having them. So I just quickly go over it really quick. If there's a lot, you can always just go Object, Path, and then Simplify. But now that we have this, I would just round these corners right here. I think that might help it look a lot cooler. There's that. And actually, if we wanted to make this look a little bit better, I think we should elongate this center point here, not just having it switch over really quick. So how we can do that is pretty easy, honestly. We can just create a line here. I'm using the rectangle tool. You can also use the line tool. Just make sure it's straight and that there's not actually a path to fill. So that would be, for example, I would snap onto this anchor point here and just go straight. If you can't get it straight, that's completely fine. Honestly, I'll just use a square to illustrate how to do this. So you create a rectangle or square or whatever, use the Shape Builder tools, have everything selected, and just delete this half. I'm going to connect it by creating a rectangle right here. Now that we have the square, we can just move it over here by half by turning snap to grid off. And as you can see, we were a little bit off when cutting it off originally. So that's completely fine though. So what we'll do now is just cut off this little bit at the bottom that it left, with using the square and the top part selected. And we can just use the Shape Builder and down. And that should make it look a little bit nicer there. Awesome. And now we can select both of these, Pathfinder Unite, copy, paste it, rotate it 180, and then set it down here. And since it's not going to snap, I'm just going to turn snap to grid back on, and then I'm just going to move it. So I think it might look cool like that. I think that looks a little bit better than we originally had it. I'm gonna leave it like that. Now that we have that one completed, we're going to move on to the next one here. And this one's a bit more difficult because we have to set up the grid rather than just using the one Illustrator provides. But let's create a new document and do that. So I'm just going to call this one isometric grid. If you don't name them, it's totally fine. 1080 by 1080 is fine as well. Now to quickly create one of these, I normally just create a line with the pen tool here. I'll just create one. And once we've created the one line, we can just Shift, Alt, and drag it out a little bit. Oops. Just like so. Maybe it won't work for me. There we go. Once you've duplicated that line, make sure you only move it a little bit over in that one section. So now we can just do Command D or Control D to repeat the last action, which is just moving it that way. So it's just going to continuously move it that way. We're just going to set it up like this, very easily. Personally, I'd set up a template for this. I normally have one set up. Once you have these all duplicated, we can move it to the center of the artboard here by just selecting them all, moving them away from the artboard, and then moving them to the center. Looks good. And once you have this, we can grab them all. I would personally turn the stroke down a bit just because it's kind of a lot. 25 is decent. Now I'm going to Control or Command C to copy and then Command F to paste in place. Thank you to this guy for showing me that actually. I did that I copy and pasted in an old tutorial where I didn't paste in place and I actually didn't know that was a thing, so huge shout out to that guy, I really appreciate you. But once you have this duplicated over top, transform, rotate, and 60 degrees. And then we can just extend these by selecting this little square here and holding Alt while dragging. Looks good. Now we can select all of these here. And then I would copy and paste them in place again. And what we can do is transform, reflect, and then horizontal or vertical, doesn't really matter, it has the same effect at this point. But now you have this. And if you wanted to span the rest of the artboard, obviously you could have just made it longer originally or something. It doesn't really matter though, because we'll only need this space. And now for the last part, I'm just going to clipping mask on it. Now for the last part, I'm just going to make a clipping mask onto the artboard here just so it doesn't look all crazy. Of course, if you wanted to, you could just view with trim view on. But for the sake of your template, I would personally create a clipping mask and then just save this as a template so you can use it for later. I'm going to select everything, including the shape over that I wanted to clipping mask, and just go make clipping mask, and that should put everything in that square there. So that's nice, and we can turn trim view off. Let's bring this image into our other artboard now. Scale it up a bit just so we can see. Okay, looks good. And actually I soon noticed something, that these lines on this grid drawn are horizontal, not vertical. So we can just rotate that 90 degrees very easily. But we can move into the actual vectoring of it now. So I can see immediately that it uses those triangles as little spaces. And we can do that just here. Just like this. That's going to be the first space. This one's a lot easier just to pen tool out, honestly. So I would draw these ones right here, and just make sure that it's always snapping to the correct point on the grid here, because sometimes it might be a little bit off and you might not even notice. So if you go like that, and you start to actually vector, once you're finished, you might notice something is off. So I would just make sure that your points are always on. So we just draw those, and then we can just count how many it goes down here. So there's two different ways of approaching this. The first one is we could count how long this is. It looks to be about 8 triangles long. Or we can just produce half of this and then copy and paste the other half just to make it a little bit easier on ourselves. So for that one, I'm just going to draw the lines here. If the fill gets in the way of you drawing this, I would just turn it off by going over here and selecting this, or just selecting it down here. And then if you really want to see what you're doing, you can turn on a different color of stroke and make it a little bit bigger just so you can see what's going on. So I'm going to stop it there. I'm going to start on this side a little bit more, finish that up, draw it here, I believe. Now here and here. So halfway up this mark should be about straight down from this line right here, which I believe is right here. Nope, a little bit more over, so right here. And we can see that's right here. If you go over, they're intersecting. Now we can just draw this line straight here and then connect the anchor points. Now once you have this, we can just copy and paste this whole object by selecting it, Control C, Control V, and then rotating it over and moving it to align to the grid. And you can see that it's actually not straight down from that point, a little bit more over, right there, I believe. Yep, right there. So what we can do is just extend these 2 points here. Oh, I accidentally moved the grid. If you don't want to move the grid, actually, I would suggest just locking it. So you can go into your layers here, go into the grid by just selecting it, and then we can just hit lock. And now you'll never actually move it. You can just snap to it, which is really nice and convenient. But let's move this up here. And then we'll move this one up here as well. Those don't have to snap to specific points. They just have to be in line with the original one. There we go. And I see we have these 2 extra pieces sticking out here. That won't be a problem. We can just go like this. How do they look? Okay, yeah, just a flat ending. A little bit more actually. Let's send it out to here. And probably snap it to one of these. And we can just cut off these points with the shape builder. And that looks to be about right. It might have a little bit more spacing. So let's move these points up to this line. Well, that might not be exact. I'm just going to move it off of the line so I can see, and now I know where to snap. Yep, that looks decent, and as long as these ones are in line, that should be good. Yep, and now we can just copy and paste this one to the other side and make sure it snaps along with those lines. Rotate it 180. Now we just put it in place here. If it doesn't snap for you in the right spot, I would recommend just using a rectangle, putting an end where you'd like this object to snap, and then just snapping it in right there. Perfect. Looks good to me. And now we can turn the fill back on just so we can see what it looks like. Personally, I'm not really a big fan of this logo, but I think it's a decent way to illustrate what you can do with isometric logos. There's a lot more of the triangle-oriented logos that you could do, and they do look really cool in the end. But I think that'll be it for this video, so if you've seen something you liked or learned, feel free to let me know on Twitter or Instagram. Before I end the video, I just really wanted to do a little giveaway to give back to the people supporting me. I wanted to give away one of these little sketchbooks of mine with the 2 different types of grids on it. I think it could be really helpful for a lot of client work or a lot of sketching that you do and just a lot of learning in general. So if you want one of these, feel free to comment below and make sure you're subscribed to the channel with the notification bell on. And I can't check who likes the videos, so you don't have to do that, I guess, but if you want to, it'd be really appreciated. So yeah, feel free to just leave a comment, make sure you're subscribed, and I will pick a winner in the video after the next one, just so I have time to collect the responses and whatnot. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys have a great day.